Mommy Seeing Double, and she should join shortly. Um, and there she is. You were able to do it so fast.
Oh my gosh, coming back. Obviously, I've not upgraded my apps very well.
But you got it. Good job.
Got it. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Marina. How are you?
I'm good. I was just telling everybody that this is a lie because it's 10 a.m. my time and I'm usually in pajamas, just rolling out of bed. Well, it's 3 p.m. your time, hey.
I'm in pajamas from the waist down.
There you go. Well, I'm in leggings. I spent the past year in leggings, so
Same here. Same here.
So Lana is Mommy Seeing Double. It's her blog and it's her Instagram name. And are you also on Twitter and other places, on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter as much, although I share stuff to that, but mainly on Instagram. I love Instagram, and have a support on Facebook, and I also share, when you share Instagram posts to Twitter and Facebook at the same time. So I try and do that to raise awareness, because the more platforms we raise awareness, the better, really.
Right.
But
yes, and you have vestibular migraine, right?
Yeah, I do. So I was diagnosed with, after a 2-year search of finding out what the hell was going on with me, I was diagnosed at 12. So what's that? Can't even count. 2012 anyway. And my symptoms started just after I gave birth, maybe a few months after I gave birth to my twins in 2009. So I had a 2-year painstaking search to find out what was going on, really.
And this is this is such a common thing. When I was talking to Alicia at our last live, she had a similar experience, that it took so long to find a diagnosis.
It does.
What was it like to go all this time not knowing what was going on with you?
It's scary. It really is scary, because these symptoms are, I think people that don't experience these types of symptoms don't really understand how debilitating and scary they are. And I think the main thing was, I started off feeling disequilibrium, feeling a bit off balance, feeling woozy, feeling like the ground sort of gives way, feeling like I'm sort of slopes when I'm not, feeling just generally just not quite right. And other things to go with that was immediately sort of, early on, I had light sensitivity. I had noise sensitivity, terrible noise sensitivity. So I couldn't really have anybody behind me or near my ears. They had to be in front of me, weirdly.
Yeah.
All these things that were very alien feelings to me, but because before any of this darkened my door, I was fine. I had never experienced any headaches, dizziness, anxiety, light sensitivity, noise, nothing. I literally had no issues at all, apart from the odd headache when I'd been drinking too much, but that was about it. So yes.
Did something trigger this for you?
Well, I have the hormonal version of vestibular migraine. So my vestibular migraines are very much and triggered by giving birth to my twins in 2009.
Same for me.
Oh, right. And it was, so I just had these beautiful babies, then I wanted to enjoy them, and suddenly the onset of these weird feelings came and ramped up from there, and it really ramped up. It didn't start off really intense. It steadily
gradual.
Yeah, crept in. and sort of it faded in and out. Like sometimes I would feel, actually, I think it's gone. Oh, and then it would get worse. And then it would go, oh, okay, and get worse. And by 2012, I literally could hardly walk across my lounge without the aid of a walking stick. So for 2 years, I went backwards, forwards to GPs, doctors, consultants, you know, every person I could try and get an answer from, and wasn't really getting anywhere until my other GP that I got on board, who was amazing, knew a vestibular consultant who at the time was one of the best in Europe, and he was nearly retired, but he agreed to see me, and he was absolutely fantastic. So he diagnosed me in 2000.
That must be such a great feeling, but it's only the beginning. Once you get a diagnosis, that's only the beginning of the journey, because then you have to start the treatment.
That's it, and I think half the battle is getting the diagnosis. I think a lot of people hang on to trying to get the diagnosis and sometimes never actually get it.
Right.
You know, if I've got people in the group that are 17, 25 years into this, I don't even know what they've got. They've never had clear answers. They've been given 5 or 10 different diagnoses, and they don't really know which one to pick.
Right.
So it is half the battle, but it is, you know, well, for me, it was important to know, I suppose, to label it in ways, to research and really get to know what I have.
Do you get any pain with your attacks, Lana, or the dizziness is your main symptom?
I have, I think it's hormonal. I get the really piercing, sharp headaches, really painful headaches sometimes. They're a lot better than they were.
Hi, Grace.
Yes. What a person without migraines would typically think a migraine is. I do get the heavy head, the light changes around me, it goes quite orangey, I get really piercing headache, and I can actually differentiate between the hormonal headache and just maybe a tension headache or a stress headache. So the hormonal headaches that I have are quite sharp and nasty, like ice picks, like really.
You get it all.
Yeah. I know a lot of people with vestibular migraines don't get headaches at all, which is where the misunderstanding comes.
Right.
One of the first major symptoms people get is the dizziness, and then you get vertigo. You know, the headaches seem to be sort of down the list a little bit more, but if you're hormonal side, I think maybe you get a little bit more headachy. Right. So I don't know whether you from headaches.
I do not have VM, thankfully. The diagnosis I have is plenty for me. But the pain is my main symptom. I get pain, the light sensitivity, the noise sensitivity, nausea, vomiting, but pain is my main thing. It's debilitating. Obviously, the medications I'm on make the frequency and severity less frequent and less severe, thankfully. But the pain is my main symptom. And my story is similar to yours, minus the VM, is that when I got pregnant and had my kids, gradually my symptoms just began to increase. And by the time my kids, you know, my daughter was 6 months old and my son was, he's 18 months older, I could barely, hi Jennifer, I could barely walk, not because I was dizzy, but because I was in so much pain and I was so weak from vomiting and just, you know, my body was in constant prodrome, postdrome attack mode. So I wasn't dizzy, but my body was weak. So I was, you know, holding onto walls because I was just in so much pain. So yeah, and then it just took a while for my body to recuperate and find the treatments that worked for me. But
I would imagine the nausea is exhausting, because sometimes I do get nausea, but I've been lucky to get that as a symptom of mine. But I can imagine I have case of nausea, My last relapse, I had quite a bit of nausea, and it was exhausting. And then it causes the fatigue, and then you've got the pain on top. That's hard.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that you're so open about this anxiety, depression, the mental health, which is so tied into migraine. When we are in chronic pain, I mean, it takes such a hit on our mental health. When I was dealing with daily migraine attacks, when my babies were so little, I just remember sitting on the couch and thinking, like, this is it. Like, I cannot stand up to pick up my own child. And that's just, you know, like the anxiety and depression were so high. And, you know, I was at a point where talk therapy wasn't going to help me. And so my doctors decided to put me on anti-anxiety, anti-depression medications. And within days, thankfully, it started to help me. But before I went on the medication, it was probably a year of me just going down and down and down, and it was a hit on my mental health. Hello, Amy from Migraine Life. And just like these dark thoughts in my head, you know, and I just didn't know how to handle it. I've always had anxiety. I've always been, you know, anxious, but the migraine, living with migraine, just took my body, my mind just took such a hit. And so when I went on medication, literally within days, I just stopped crying. And when you stop crying, your symptoms immediately get better, as it is, you know? So it's like a vicious cycle, you know? Migraine, mental health doesn't cause migraine, but mental health can worsen migraine, and migraine can worsen mental health. So just wondering, any thoughts you have, you know, about your experience, any tips you have, I'd love to hear it. And I know that other people would too.
Well, you're right. Most people I speak to, which has been quite a lot over the many years of suffering from this, I cannot remember anybody who hasn't had any mental illness from vestibular migraine or vestibular or chronic illness. The majority have. I would say probably 95% of people at me have had some sort of mental illness, anxiety, PTSD, you know, stress, depression, because it is so common. And I think where our vestibular system is, which was explained to me years ago, it's very close to the emotions part of our brains, apparently. So, you know, we're gonna, if we've got heightened symptoms and these awful debilitating symptoms, you're gonna experience some sort of mental illness of some sort, whether it's both anxiety and depression, or depression. Mine started, I would say, the first year I had symptoms, I didn't feel overly anxious because I was sort of wondering what are the symptoms. Of course, they made me feel worried and scared and everything with it. But the actual general anxiety disorder didn't ramp up until, I would say, well, didn't get severe until a year into it. So certainly 2011, I started feeling quite jittery, butterflies in the stomach, worried about stuff. Oh my gosh, am I going to fall over? What am I going to do? And then in line with that, the depression started, and both ramped up in unison, in parallel with each other, up and up and up, until I hit my lowest in 2013, when I was diagnosed with my second vestibular condition, which is vestibular neuritis, when I had nerve damage from viral attacks, tonsillitis, and antibiotic damaged, unfortunately, my nerves. And that really, I really sunk into it. And I remember my vestibular therapist saying to me, "You're going to be always like this." And that, unfortunately, was one of the worst things she could say to me, because I was already anxious and I was really depressed. But having this second condition kick in and having my world just literally turned upside down and feeling so awful, and I got young twins, and I couldn't really do much with them. I couldn't give them breakfast. I couldn't get out of bed. You know, it was awful. And I have to say, I am very honest now about my health, but back then I had no one really who understood, and it was not as openly spoken about back then. And I felt completely lost. I had these diagnoses that I had no idea what they were. No one knew around me what they were. There was no support groups like there are now. Yes, there were forums on Google and forums, but they scared me about some things.
Right.
Just stop reading anything.
Right.
And I was very alone. I think, you know, that's what everybody feels, even though there's lots of talk about it. People still do feel alone, right? And that's why I'm so open about not just my vestibular stuff and the other conditions I have. I've got endometriosis and I've got triple P as well. But I think what's really important and what's key about this whole thing is mindset. And mental illness is so common in chronic illness that it has to be talked about. And I think if you have an Instagram account and you're spreading awareness, you just got to be as raw and real as possible, because what is the point, really? But then again, in the same vein, a lot of people, you know, don't want to be. It hurts them talking about it. Because sometimes it triggers me talking about anxiety, depression, but I have to talk about it to help others feel less alone. So yes, I've had a real battle with anxiety. Depression wise, I'm very open that I felt suicidal back in the early days. I literally didn't want to be. 2013, having the second diagnosis, I thought, what is the point? I don't want to be dizzy like two children and not have support around me. As time went on, I somehow dug deep and started working on my mindset more, starting to get a little bit deeper and a bit more spiritual, and trying to connect with my inner self and not look too much on the surface. I tried to sort of look more in the core of myself, and started meditation, and we'll maybe go on to this later, but I started doing more mindfulness meditation, doing more exercise, looking after myself nutrition wise, because I do think a lot of illnesses come from the gut as well, mental illness as well, and just generally looking after myself and really concentrating on that mindset side. But that's you know, people do forget. They're so concentrating on the dizziness and the vertigo and the light sensitivity and the tinnitus and everything around that they're feeling. What they do forget is actually the mental side and the mindset side. The healing of that can heal a lot of symptoms as well. Because you just picked up on a point of the loop, for the anxiety loop, the depression loop. If you
get stuck in.
If you're anxious, you feel dizzier. If you feel more dizzy, you feel more anxious, and then you feel more depressed. And you can't get out of that loop until you really concentrate on calming everything down. So that's what I've been working on for quite some time, and I'm finally like I'm living my life now, thank God.
Yeah. So I'll, if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the comments, and we'll go through them. But maybe Lana and I can talk about some strategies that we use. Lana already mentioned meditation, which is wonderful. I meditate every night before bed, and it's become such such habit that I actually turn on meditation. I meditate for 10 minutes and I just fall asleep, and I don't know if I even finished the meditation. Yeah, it just puts me to sleep.
And I think that's the best thing that I found, is I used to do meditation sometime in the morning, sometime in the day, sometime in the afternoon when I felt off. Sometimes I would do 3-4 meditations a day, because I'm like, please, I want to go to sleep. But last thing at night's brilliant because your brain remembers what you've last done. So if you wake up in the morning, I used to wake up jittery and got general anxiety, panic, terrible severe panic disorder as well. I would have 3 panic attacks a week back then. So actually doing meditation just before bed, your brain's going to remember that calm state, and then you fall asleep whilst you. And I remember my therapist. I used to say to her, "I fall asleep whilst doing meditation. Is that okay?" And she's like, "Absolutely, good sign."
Yes. Let me tell you what Jennifer says. I don't know. Can you see the comments from people? Okay. So Jennifer says that Laura, finding your group a few years ago has been so wonderful. It's been one of the best things for me. Your posts and lives have given me hope living with VM. That's so wonderful.
Sweet.
It's so sweet.
I'll try not to blub. I can see Karina. Hi, Karina.
To what you said that your brain remembers it. So I have insomnia, so I don't sleep well or at all or much. And that affects my migraine attacks. It's like one of my triggers is not sleeping well. So actually, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I turn the meditations back on. And I feel like my brain remembers that I'm supposed to fall asleep when I hear that voice, and it helps me fall back asleep.
I mean, anxiety, to go back to anxiety, anxiety is habitual. You know, once you get anxiety, it becomes a habit, and you get into that cycle. Your brain gets used to anxiety. It's used to sort of making things out, mountains out of molehills. And trying to break that is really hard, but also meditation can be habitual as well, which is a good thing, and getting into a routine like that. But there are other strategies I use parallel to meditation. So there's something called EFT tapping, which has been out of a lot of sticky moments. I've had a lot of panic attacks, more than I can count, and EFT tapping has really just it sort of is a quick fix for me. Meditation is a bit more of a routine. You know, I do that every night, and it's in my schedule. But EFT tapping is a tool that is free and we can do ourselves and learn it ourselves, that we can have at our disposal. We don't need any tools physically to just our hands and our bodies. And our minds, and it's got me out of some sticky moments. And I will share this after, but this is what I was given by my therapist years ago, and it's about how to do it. It's a sort of simplistic way to set it up, and you use affirmations and really nice statements to say, I'm feeling really panicky about going out somewhere. I set up a statement saying, even though I feel dizzy, I'm safe. And then I tap on the meridian points. So people think I'm completely mad when they look at me doing this.
No, I've heard of people doing that. So what does that do? Does that calm you down?
It reinforces and affirms the affirmation set up statement, affirms to you that you're safe. No harm is going to come to you. So my setup statement, typically, you know, even though I'm feeling dizzy, I am safe, no harm is going to come. I'll be home at some point later, but for now I'm going to be okay. And I just keep doing that, and that's the most important one here. It's the karate chop. That in hypnosis, actually, sometimes the NLP, the neuroplasticity, to rewire the brain. And it actually just is. People often say to me, how does that work? Trust me, when my therapist told me years ago, I thought, what? I'm not going to go around tapping my head like a mad person. But
I mean, I've seen crazier things, so
subtly. So sometimes at a restaurant or wherever I am, I just, you know, I could be like this and I'm like that. So you can do it subtly, but it really has helped me. A lot of my group and people that follow me do it.
Alicia, Mrs. Migraine Tastic says, I used to do this regularly in the early stages of VM. I was undiagnosed for a long time. Casey, migraine nutritionist, says, heard of tapping, but never tried it. Sounds like a great tool. Going to have to remember it for later. I've actually meant to look this up before because I've heard of a few people in the community do this. So I'm actually going to look this up later because it seems like a nice tool.
It's good for depression. It's good for pain management as well. It's not just for panic disorder and panic attacks and anxiety. It is for stress. It's for any feeling of not feeling quite right. You know, maybe you feel dizzy and you're just like, oh, that's, you know, a bit of a weird feeling. You know, I've just been to the habit now of using it, and I find it really helpful to me. And you know, the panic attacks sort of kicking off, but it's the only thing I remember to do. You know, people say, oh, you need to do your breathing techniques and things like that. Well, when I'm in the midst of a panic attack, everything goes out the window. I can't think straight. Right. I literally just I feel like I'm going to die when I have a panic attack.
Right.
So EFT tapping is, useful.
Vestibular Guru says she wants a tutorial. Mrs. Migraine Tastic says she's tapping right now, convincing herself that her pain isn't that high right now. She's actually supposed to be asleep right now because it's 10:30 p.m. her time.
In Australia.
But, Amy from Migraine Life says maybe we can start a cephaly and tap group. Maybe we should.
Yes. Okay.
Amy from Migraine Life actually had a question about, do you have any tips for speaking to people outside of the chronic illness community about your physical and mental health? So maybe like friends and family?
Yeah. For years and years, I bashed my head on a brick wall trying to explain what I had. And I sent when I literally got the name diagnosis, I sent links to vestibular.org, actually, to Vestibular Disorders Association's website. Sent links around to families, links around to friends, tried to explain to them face to face what I had. And actually, no matter how much you try and explain to someone what it kind of feels like, you can't explain it. And B, there's just no way that they could grasp whatever it would be like until they experienced it themselves. God forbid. So for years, I, used a lot of my brain power and space in my brain getting bogged down to explain to people and getting frustrated that people and getting upset that why aren't they why can't they support me? But at the end of the day, I just think, now I've said it and I've accepted that no one can get it unless they've got it. No one can get it unless they're in a community like us that completely get it, and that's okay with me. And I don't now feel frustrated or angry towards people, because that is, if you came to me without, say 15 years ago, you said, I've got dizziness, tried to explain it, guaranteed I'd be like, what? I can't understand. Anyway, it's that kind of thing. So I think until you accept that, you kind of get angry and frustrated, and that can make you feel ill. That can make you worse. That can make you feel anxious and depressed in itself. So I would say, try and explain it in simple terms and try and send links over, but don't sort of, get frustrated or angry if someone turns around and says, oh, we understand it. But even when people don't understand it, they can still support you. I still support people who have illnesses that I don't understand. So I can't understand what Parkinson's is like, for example, or having cancer and going through chemo, or any other chronic illness or severe illness. But I can still support them by being there and checking in now and again. So it doesn't stop people from supporting.
Yeah, I actually, just to add briefly to that, I have a very supportive family, and but as much as my family tries to support me and understand, there's just they just don't know what it's like. You know what I mean? And once I found the community here, like the migrant community, um, it's enough for me to know that I can reach out to somebody, like you or like Alicia, and and I can say, my head hurts, and they know exactly what I mean, and yes, to accept the fact that people who don't experience migraine can only understand you to an extent, and that's okay. you know and also that some people won't believe us, some people won't understand us and don't want to, and that's also okay. There's some friends and family who um, that there are some friends and family who won't try to understand this, and that's okay too. you know um, focus I focus on the friends and family who do support.
Yes,
and right.
Can people actually hear me now? Because I think there was a problem.
I hear you.
Yeah, I just think that they could hear me through your microphone, but maybe not mine. But sometimes this stand blocks my microphone. So if you can hear me now, okay? Can someone say thumbs up?
Alicia says she can hear,
right.
and she's watching Netflix. Alicia, go to sleep.
Thank you.
Migraine Life can hear us both, but she's from UK as well. Migraine nutritionist. Oops, she said that all I ever hope is that they try to understand, and exactly that's all we can do. Somebody who doesn't have migraine can't understand 100%, and that's normal, but if they try to understand, that's all we can ever hope.
I think the other thing on the spin-off of this is you've got that side of things, but you've also got the side of things that people can be very I've come across, and I have actually unfortunately have lost some friends through it, are people that they don't understand, but then they don't support, and then they chuck in the negatives and judgmental side of things.
Okay, toxic people, walk the other way, out, goodbye.
And they're, that's their opinion, that's their, and how you take that on board is really important. So I tend to sort of let it go out and send them love and send them on their way.
Yep. Walk the other way.
Oh,
Exactly. So let's get back to some tips for mental health. We talked about meditation, tapping. You are a queen of walking for exercise. You're always walking. And it's so hard for me to get into a regular habit for walking. And so I try to walk with my kids, but for some reason we just can't be regular about it. It's probably because it's cold outside and I hate the cold. But I'm really trying really hard to be more active. Does walking help your anxiety and
I would say walking has been number one, the biggest thing I have ever done to improve everything. My mental illness, my anxiety, my depression, my PTSD, all of my vestibular disorders, my endometriosis, everything. And actually getting out in nature is the key for me, because I find that I can easily disconnect from myself, being indoors too much with fake lighting and just being feeling enclosed. And yes, you get into a rut and you can't get out. And yes, I get that as well, because I do that. And I've been really busy with work, and we've only been out for like 2 walks in 4 weeks because we just can't get time to get out.
Do you take your girls for a walk?
Yeah, they walk 8-9 miles with us. on a regular. Yeah, we basically, with walking, it wasn't overnight. It was baby steps, little bite-sized pieces. I started off walking to the end of my lounge with my walking stick. I then started off walking to the end of the road the next week. Then I just set myself little goals over time and didn't put too much pressure on myself to do too much. And I think it's about permissions as well. If you don't quite feel like walking of a day, it doesn't really matter. So don't feel guilty about not walking, and don't put pressure on yourself to go for a walk. Just go for a walk when you feel you can, and just go as far as you possibly can. But don't feel guilty about not being able to reach that end of the field, or, you know, that goal.
Hi.
Hello.
There's my babies.
Oh, nice to see you.
I'm gonna say hi, and then
Oh,
you have to
another
go.
one.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Tell Daddy. Yes. Tell Daddy.
I know that.
1 hour to myself. Just give it to me.
On to me time.
Just give it to me.
And whilst going out in nature, and yes, if it's raining, I love going out in the rain, because actually raining grounds me. Actually, the coldness grounds me. It makes me feel alive. You know.
Wait, did I miss something? Hold on. 9 miles? Who said 9 miles?
Oh, I was like 9 miles, Yatza. Well, I started tiny steps, as I said, going towards my across my house, then across my garden. Then I built up. By the time I really built it up, I was doing 9 miles.
Oh, wow.
Throughout the week.
Oh my God.
And because the thing is, your brain, you can really, even at my age, you can train your brain to cope with you can train your brain. It's amazing. People think, oh yeah, but I'm over 40 and, you know, my brain's not, it can't be trained, and I'm too dizzy and I'm too vertigo-y. But you really can. Okay, I have to rest the next day, after a few days after I've done these long walks, but I have got to the point where I can walk miles and miles, which is fantastic. So yes, it does give people hope, but it's not overnight. And it is little bite-sized pieces, and not putting too much pressure on yourself. The other thing whilst I'm walking in nature is tree hugging. So
I saw one of your tree hugging posts.
So
does that help?
Tree. It does help me. It really does. And it helps the tree. No, the thing is with tree hugging, which people don't quite get on a vestibular side and mental illness side, is yes, I love tree hugging, and I love to give that particular tree a hug, and I will choose the tree. So my husband says on a walk, which tree are you going to choose this walk? And I'll maybe hug 1 tree or 3 trees or 4 trees of that walk. But what it does is, when you hug a tree, imagine you can feel the stability and the security of that trunk of that tree. How stable is that tree? Very, very, very stable if you've got a really thick tree to hug. So imagine that being your body. So the trunk of the tree is your body, and then the roots of that tree, just imagine your feet. This is all about grounding. So imagine that you've got roots growing from the bottom of your soles of your feet going down into the core of the earth. That stables you, and that is grounding. So often, the other thing I do sometimes is when I'm feeling a bit off, even in cold weather, I'll go out barefoot or walk around the house barefoot, but nothing better than going out on the ground, on the earth, and connecting.
We have snow right now. Don't make me do it. Don't do it.
That could be a live freezing video. No, I don't.
If I go outside right now barefoot, my husband's gonna think something's wrong with me.
So yes, it is, you know, there's lots of techniques. There's meditation, there's EFT tapping, there's nature, there's walking, there's other forms of exercise. You just got to do what you feel is right for you. There's body scans as well. I do now and again. If I'm feeling really, really, really bad, I'll do a Joey Remini body scan. You can find them on her free resources on seekingbalance.au.com, or is it .com.au, something like that. But Joey Remini, Google her. She does some fantastic free resource, but the body scans are brilliant. So that is about grounding and finding, just connecting and being in that moment. So there's lots of oh, someone's put love body scans.
Alicia, go to sleep and don't be naughty.
Go to sleep. You can watch it back after. The other thing people do forget is simplifying. And actually, life can sort of run away from us, and routines, and, you know, homeschooling recently and work.
Oh, me? Yeah, homeschooling.
Yeah. And it can get very complicated. So trying to simplify things can calm our minds down as well.
How do you actually simplify, though? How do you do that?
Well, I'm not talking about, sort of, maybe at the moment is a little bit hard to simplify because of the juggling. But years ago, I found myself, when I was at my worst anxiety and panic, I was very stressed. I was running a couple of businesses. I was also a governor at the school. I had twin girls. I was dealing with chronic illness. I was doing other stuff as well, cleaning the house, trying to cook. And it all just got too much. And I do remember my consultant saying, you need to simplify. You need to sort of maybe take a step back and reduce your load.
Okay, I understand. Dropping something, prioritizing things.
Yes.
Right?
And so I thought long and hard about that, and it was really hard to do, but I have to give up my business, unfortunately, and I took a year off to get better. Mm-hmm. I resigned from my governor role to get better, and I really started reducing a lot of the load that I had on me, because I was doing too much. And I think with women especially, we can just do so much, you know, and I think it just it is a bit of a load on our mental and physical symptoms. So yeah, simplifying is good. And me time as well, which is all, you know,
the self-care, the me time.
Yeah, and I have a lot of people that say, but I haven't got time for me time. I've got 3, 4, 5 kids, and I've got this and that. But there's always time for me time. And if you've got it, lucky enough to have a partner or family that can look after your children, or can help out with a meal, or, you know, I think we're quite control freaks, a lot of us warriors. Right. And sometimes we have to sort of put that pride aside and say, actually, I need a bit of support. Yes, please make that meal for me. And yes, can I have a bit of a sleep or a rest? So it is about me time as well.
I go to the bathroom and take my time. That's my me time. I spend 10 minutes washing my hands. My husband thinks that, you know, it takes me 30 minutes to go to the bathroom each time, but that's my me time every day. I just take forever to go to the bathroom. And then sometimes he watches the kids, and, you know, this year has been tough because we have been home, all of us, for a year now. My husband has been working from home, and I have been working from home, and the kids have been learning from home. So we have all been home. So I haven't been home alone. There's been no me time alone. So I had to go to the bathroom and shut my door. So you can be creative. You can be creative to find me time.
And it only, actually, people think they have to have hours of me time. In fact, even just 10 minutes.
Right. 10 minutes. Wash your hands for 10 minutes.
Just, you know, if you can get 10 minutes of a day, that's better than nothing. So I think we all have to just step back a little bit sometimes. It's all good talking about it. It's just getting it into practice, which is difficult.
I'm going to scroll up to see if there's any comments or questions we missed, because we're closing to an hour, and I know that this could be 20 minutes, but time flies when we're just chatting. So let me just scroll up a little bit, and if anybody has any last minute questions, drop them.
I've seen a comment here actually, which is really interesting, and it's one that I wanted to raise as well.
Go for it.
Your kids, Red Burnsy said, your kiddos will learn to care for themselves when they see your example. So when I couldn't do stuff for myself or anybody else, to that matter, and I couldn't get out of bed and I couldn't make them breakfast, and they were 3 years old and I was really ill, they have been making breakfast for themselves since they were 3. So actually, on a positive side, not that I ever wanted it to happen like that, but on a positive spin on a negative situation, they have become more independent. They've become self-sufficient. They have become more empathetic and respectful of other people's illnesses. They are very, very used to running up the stairs with my walking stick to give it to me when I wasn't feeling very well. I tried to hide some things which would scare them. You know, me, how can you hide a drop attack when you fall on the floor? It's difficult. There's certain things I try to hide, obviously my suicidal thoughts and things like that. I wouldn't want to ever put that on anybody else. But there's some things that I have shared with them that, you know, mummy gets tired sometimes. Mummy has to have a rest sometimes. Mummy can't do certain things. So they weren't too upset when I couldn't go to the cinema or theatre or shopping with them. So I think being open with kids isn't a negative or a bad thing. I think actually it molds them into a good person in the end. And actually my kids now, thoughtful, kind, empathetic. Yes, they have their moments. But, you know, it's made them more of a rounded person. So I'm thankful for that, you know.
How old are your girls now?
They're 11 now. So getting to the age where they're nearly teenagers already.
They're still young.
But I think it is important. I think also not just kids, but it's important for us to be honest with family and friends, how I'm feeling, you know, because I think I remember my therapist saying to me once, stop lying to people and saying you're okay. When someone says to you, how are you feeling? Don't just automatically, I'm fine, just to cover it up. But actually say, actually today I'm feeling a little bit off, you know, because that's where people just assume you're okay all the time.
Right.
Actually being, you know, a little bit more honest about, you know, how you're feeling can help people sort of understand a little bit more of how you have
great advice. Right. It's like our default answer. Oh, I'm fine.
Yes. I'm fine. I did it all the time for years.
Right. Amy from the Migraine Life says, the best thing for my mental health has been getting out for a walk. Yeah. On days where head is bad, even just sitting outside can help. And Amy lives in a beautiful place.
She lives in Cornwall, actually, I think, which is beautiful.
Yes, yes.
The other thing I was going to say is exercise. You mentioned walking is fantastic for mental health and for vestibular stuff as well. So exercise is good. And also I found acceptance. Acceptance was good. I think I battled and pushed against it all the time for years. I'm not going to accept this. This is not my way of life. I don't want to be like this. But actually, the last 3 years I've worked on that acceptance. I don't think I'll ever accept it fully, but I've accepted it as much as I can. And that's helped lift the guilt, the pressure, and it's helped me move forward and, you know, feel better.
I think that's what's helped me too to make progress is accepting, fighting less, like the fighting inside of me that, you know, that just accepting that this is something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life probably. I would still continue trying all the treatments and all the things and doing everything I can to continue to try to feel better because all the new treatments keep coming out. But accepting that it is just what it is and it's not my fault has done wonders for my mental health. So I'm there with you. migraine
You had
nutritionist.
you had some questions come through when you went advertised this, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I did. We are at an hour though, so if you have to go.
Yeah, no worries.
We have, what advice would Laura give to a mother newly diagnosed with VM? That's from Alicia, Mrs. Migraine Tastic.
Well, I think we've touched on it a bit, about being honest and telling our kids sometimes that we can't, putting the pressure off us a little bit.
And asking for help.
Asking for
help.
Yeah,
if you have somebody, that would be good.
Yeah. Support is huge in that.
What's your best parenting with migraine VM tip or hack? There's no hacks.
There's no hacks. Go with the flow.
Each day.
Oh my goodness. Just don't put too much pressure on yourself, and don't feel guilty if you
No
can't.
guilt. If you saw my last reel and if you didn't go see it, no guilt. I do not support guilt.
No.
How does Laura pace with VM?
Okay. I have symptom diaries helps this. So I have a happy medium, a fine balance. So I don't do too much or too little. It's really, really hard. Not overnight again. It takes quite a while to get to know your level. So I have to be still very careful, even though I'm much better now. I have to be very careful with head movements and my triggers. But definitely the symptom diary helped with that, to get to know my conditions more, get to know my triggers, and then I was able to know, if I do a whole day's gardening, it's a no for me. If I go for two long walks consecutively into the next day after, is a no. So there's certain things, if I turn my head quickly, there's lots of things that I've got to know. Sometimes they go out the window. But it is that fine balance, is that happy medium, and trying to find it.
Yeah. I'm not good at pacing, and we talked about that with Alicia as well in the last slide.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, it is, because once you feel better,
yeah,
you see the dirty house and you're like, ah.
And then you do too much, and then and then you feel like you're back to square one, but you're actually not. You're just done a little bit too much.
Right. All right, if you guys want to see more of Laura, find her, Mommy Seeing Double. I will make this video available on my IGTV section of the account, so whoever hasn't seen the whole thing can watch it. Lana, thank you so much. This was so fun to chat. I can't believe you're on the other side of the world during a pandemic, and we can do this.
I know.
This is so great.
Technology.
I know, but thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for your time.
I'm gonna sign off now. Okay, bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.